By the 9 and 4. Welcome back to the library. I am the recorder, and in this entry, we're going to cover in brief what happens when one dies in the realms. A morbid topic for sure, but one with a surprisingly bright answer. For most at least. As regular visitors and perceptive patrons of the library are already aware, this will be just a quick introduction into the subject of the afterlife, with more to come in the future. To begin with, it is important to note that only creatures with a full soul really go anywhere after their deaths. In this case, what is meant by a full soul is made up of a combination of sapience, sentience, as well as a conception of death and what comes after on a cultural base level. The last is a bit hard to convey properly, however it might be best to be thought as the requirement for there to be somewhere to go to have been conceived, or if a species has not yet considered that there is such a place or the need for one, it doesn't exist yet. For creatures that do not fit the description, unless a bond with another that does fit the qualifications is in place, death merely results in a reincarnation into one form or another. For those that do qualify, death is a tricky thing, as there are a variety of tales and stories, accounts and recollections as to what happens when you die. Don't forget, in the realms, death is but one form of injury that can be mended with the right magic or other powers. Thus, we have a vast multitude of first-hand accounts. Problem is, many of these conflict, or otherwise don't line up with each other equally trustworthy accounts. Individuals that have crossed multiple times over the threshold of death have reported differing series of events, with no clear rhyme or reason, only serving to make things more confusing. Despite all the confusion and the varying details, a clear pattern does emerge. First, there is a period of disconnection, perhaps confusion, as the mortal body and the spirit part, described as an amplification of the senses that are present in that moment, whether it be fury, pain, or shock. This period tends to be short, and for those that experience it for the first time, often filled with denial and attempts to re-establish their ties to the mortal plane. On rare occasions, this works, and the being manages to cling to life beyond death, restarting their body through sheer will. However, for those that do not learn to let go soon after their deaths take full hold, only the slow descent into one of the various forms of vile wraiths or poltergeists, or other forms of undead is possible, forever being tied to the mortal realm by their inability to let go. Assuming one is able to accept their situation, the next period is one of travel. The soul will begin to travel to where it should be, being drawn by what is described as a line, a rope, a thread, or a light, amongst other imagery. Following this lead, we'll first see the spirit slide from the mortal plane, or more precisely, the spirit plane attached to it, to the more grand and infinite plane of interplanar reality. Across this, the soul must travel to their God's divine plane, following the light to their destination. And for those without a personal, family, or patron deity, the planes of concept, where they will find themselves among those of like mind and spirit. The next step for the soul is to be accepted and welcomed into their eternal home. This sometimes requires testing and judgment, or it may require the professements of sins and the acceptance of punishments for them. It all depends on the God in question at the end. And for those who fail to receive acceptance, unless sentenced to another, darker fate, their souls will simply go to the planes of concepts, as if they had no God at all. Now, the final two steps are the ones that seem to be the most varied, as intervention by magi, holy men, gods and their servants, as well as darker forces coming to collect on debts owed, all serve as ways to shortcut or otherwise affect the soul after it is parted from its mortal body. At any time, a god or their servants could appear to personally guide the soul to its home, as a reward for bravery in life or other acts bringing honor or prestige to the deity. Likewise, a god could appear that is not the personal god of the now dead, but one that for one reason or another has taken an interest in the now deceased person. They may offer instead to let the soul reside in their plane as a reward for being of such interest. This most happens to those without a personal god already, as poaching the followers of another is seen as disrespectful to the other deity. Likewise, a force with claim on the soul due to a deal or agreement may appear to take it with force, foregoing any travel that would otherwise be needed. There is a god whose entire duty is collecting the souls that would otherwise move on to the realms of his fellows, but their manner of death allows him to instead lay claim. What manner of death could warrant one taking the souls pledged to another? Dying in cowardice, where that cowardice has cost the lives of those who were not so hampered. Those that fell due to the coward will find themselves instead guided with all due haste to their god's realms. For that is the dual nature of Drexai the Dark, god of death, penance, judgment, and the patron of cowards. He grants those fallen a quick transition to their eternal reward, and offers cowards a path to redemption through punishment and the constant testing of soul and will. Those that fail this are forever bound to his wills as thralls and servants, combing battlefields for the cowardly dead and nearly dying for the rest of time. A common bit of writing found in most books that discuss this deity in question describe things as such. Drexai the Dark comes in fogs of eve and morn, forever claiming those who failed to keep oaths sworn. His touch is pain and regret his gaze, to teach the cowards braver ways. For those of spirit true and wills inspired, Drexai the Dark shall lead them to paradise retire. Drexai the Dark is one of the boogie gods of the realms, one who will comfort the cowards, and, if mothers across the realms are to be believed, little ones who don't listen to their parents. Of course, the last is untrue, but it should be noted that Drexai has never exactly denied it either. But, in his own words, "There are no children amongst my flock, for children know no cowardice, Fear, perhaps, but there is no cowardice in the heart of any child, for they face a world crafted by those they can't understand, and do so with the glee that is anathema to the notion of cowardice. So pertinent it can stir the hearts of ancient and mortal alike. No, I do not believe any child could come beneath my gaze. Then, of course, there are those souls who have offended theirs or another god sufficiently for them to be sent to a place of torment and punishment for all of time. Typically, this takes the form of a plane of concept antithetical in nature to the soul in question, often being eventually broken down into raw soul stuff to be used to create the next generation of tormentors. While most often, rejection by one's gods for shortcoming will only result in being sent to the planes of concept, but it is one that is aligned with the soul in question. Not that bad of fate, all told. The severe punishment, however, is always an option to ensure that the wicked do not escape justice in the eyes of their god. For the vast majority, near eternal paradise or its like is in store for them, with all the other souls that have likewise made it to this final place of rest. Friends, family, even close and meaningful pets can be found and reunited with, joined in the endless days of rest and conversation to come. Priests and other attendants of the divine serve as they did in life, helping to guide and console those souls arriving before passing those tasks on and enjoying their own eternal peace. Magics of resurrection and the like do allow a path back from this end, but only if the soul in question allows it. For no soul can be forced to return to the mortal plane unless by their own divine patron, and even then, this is seen as a grave affront to the natural order, and only to be done in the direst of situations. These magics provide the path and energies to force the spirit back to its flesh, and most importantly, refuse them into one being. In most cases, the soul will not have reached the point of judgment or even plane of their god before being called back to the body, and thus will not have any real memories about what comes after death beyond darkness and travel. This is due to the fact that gods have the natural ability to perceive events of significance in the souls of their followers, and thus will have a sense of who will and will not be revived. They use this intuition to affect the journeys of the souls, so the soul is far less reluctant to accept the continuation of their lives. The gods understand that life is ultimately finite, while the afterlife is anything but. From death to the afterlife and back again, I think this is a good place to end this entry on the generalities of death and the afterlife in the realms, along with a quick aside about one of the less spoken of divines amongst academics, but one that is quite often name-checked by the populace of the realms, often to beseech his mercy at the sight of a battle, as the fogs heralding his coming begin to form in the twilight of dusk or dawn. For many, the security of knowing that there are such places for those that pass brings comfort and solace on long, hard nights. For others, the knowledge that there is an eternal punishment for acts truly foul keep many on the path of light. I, for one, hope you have enjoyed this entry, and as always, My regular visitors and perceptive patrons, I thank you for your time and your interest. Thank you. Now, until you next make your way back to the library for another entry, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching,